After working on the exergame structure and developing the 4 modules, the authors built an exergame on top of their structure. One benefit of the structure that the authors created is that the modules are largely reusable, and so various games can be created on top of it. The authors decided to use the Game Bike Pro as their main input device and modified it to have a wireless receiver for a heart rate monitor and an additional interface for controlling the bike's resistance. The game was developed using Microsoft's XNA Game Studio and Visual Studio. The core game mechanics were designed so that the user needs to control a helicopter using varying cycling rates. The game is a classic 2D scrolling game where the vertical thrust is controlled by the cycling of the user. The player needs to adjust the height of the helicopter in order to stay away from the boundaries and to collect items. There are also aliens that can be shot using a laser gun. The intensity in the game is controlled by the gravity operating on the helicopter. The greater the gravity, the harder the user has to cycle. For example, if a player is cycling too slow, the game control module will increase the resistance so that the user has to work harder, and it raises the user's heart rate. The challenge of the game is modified based on the current success of the player in the game. The game uses the fuzzy control system to control the game challenge. For example, the number of coins collected is put into 5 linguistic categories: very low, low, medium, high, and very high. Then a set of rules are constructed to produce a challenge. For example, if coins collected are low, then reduce the game challenge. When developing an exergame, it is hard for developers to test due to the need to constantly exercise in order to just play the game. Even if a tester has reached a low level of exhaustion, it is difficult for them to produce useful testing for a period of time. This makes it very difficult to switch between developing and testing. Also, the game needed to be tuned for players with varying levels of fitness. Players of different levels of fitness exhibit different responses, and these needed to be tested. Because of these reasons, the authors used the Virtual Body System, a software package to simulate user heart rate and response. The Virtual Body System sat between the controller and the computer to act as a translator and allowed development without the need to perform physical exertion. The authors alternated between using the Virtual Body System and user testing the system to account for the fluctuations that would occur with regards to cycling RPM and also the heart rate. Once the controller was tuned, the game challenge aspect of the game was tuned in a similar way. The authors adjusted the fuzzy sets and rules until reasonable results were reached. The graph here shows how the simulated heart rate was used to tune the PID control of the system. In the final system, the exercise effectiveness was considered good, since the player's heart rate closely followed what was desired. The authors did not provide how many people participated in their study, so we can only take their word on their results. During the trial, the authors asked the users to perform a 5-minute warm-up, a 20-minute workout, and a 5-minute cool-down. The last 15 minutes of the workout were where the players reached the desired heart rate. The table on the right shows how the user's heart rate stayed close to the target rate. Through verbal feedback, they determined that the test subjects were engaged and entertained by the game. The authors do admit that the game needs to be tested for a longer period of time to make sure that people were not just intrigued because of the novelty of the game. In conclusion, I found this paper quite refreshing to read since it used theory to guide the design. I feel that so many of the papers that we have read this semester have lacked theoretical groundwork. Also, I felt that the dual flow model, as well as the components that they proposed, were very good, and that the dual flow model may become a fundamental model in future exergames. The one part of this paper that I had a major problem with was the way in which they described their user study, as well as the way in which they conducted it. Not only did they not describe their user study very well, but they also did not adequately prove that their exergame satisfied being both attractive as well as effective. Here are some discussion questions. Please pause the video to answer each one. Question number 1. The authors believe they are creating a framework and theory for exergaming. Have they achieved their goals? What is lacking? For example, in flow, social interaction is key. Is this lacking? Question number 2. When discussing exergame success factors, the authors claim an exercise program must consider the mode or type of exercise as well as the combination of duration, intensity, and frequency. Think back to exergames that you have already used. Do any of them fail in terms of their success factors? For example, does the Wii do a good job of maintaining exercise frequency? Does the Wii consider specific types of exercise, such as aerobics? Question number 3. We have discussed various exergames this semester. Are there any games that you think would have benefited from the dual flow model? Question number 4. Does the modular structure the authors propose allow developers to create various games using one platform? Is the structure complete? For example, does it need to incorporate support for multiple players, social networking, injury prevention? Question number 5. What do you think of the virtual body system that are used for testing and tuning? Do you think this would create accurate results? The system may be good for tuning a system, but can it really account for various user types, such as people with breathing problems, rapid heart rate? Question number 6. Did the authors meet their own success factors? Does the game seem attractive? Does it seem effective? Does it successfully incorporate the dual flow model? They say that they are going to test the system for a month. Do you think the game will be just as attractive after a month? What other future work do you think they need to perform? This concludes my presentation. If you have any feedback, please let me know.